Thank you so much for watching my show, William Wallace for America. If you're watching it on Rumble, I'm also on all podcast apps, and of course, vice versa. Please visit my site, williamwallace.net, and you can find some people that are also not only actively working in our community to improve America, but you're going to see some signals pointing to some people like my next guest who are doing things to raise awareness in America, where we're losing freedom, where the problems are, things that we can do to not only unite, but save this country. You know, it's not just some of the narratives that you hear in the media about what's going wrong that we on the right like to point out. It's what we on the right and people and active groups and individuals are doing to help find those things that we can unite on. There's a lot of different things. That's why you'll see me bring on a lot of different people. Some you've heard of, some you haven't. My next guest, John Hauser, is maybe one of those people, but you need to know about his book and some important answers to questions he has. John, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you know, you wrote a book. And that's kind of how I found you. You've got a book out there. Is the name of the book How's America Self-Destructing? Did I get that right?
The name of the book is The Destruction of Liberty, and the subtitle is Creating the American Socialist Aristocracy.
But it's about is America just self-destructing? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. It's about or those who would actively destroy us. Yes.
Is that the main premise of your book? Is that America is self-destructing, and those that are doing that? Is America? Let's get to some of these questions. Is America self-destructing?
I don't know that it's self-destructing. There are people actively working for its destruction. And one of the things that I've sort of gotten a little backlash on is my subtitle, which is, creating the American socialist aristocracy, because people will tell me, well, those are two opposite things. Socialism and aristocracy are not the same thing. And I would say, then you don't know your history. If you read history, you will see that socialism and aristocracy have gone hand in hand every single time a socialist regime has come into power. They always talk about, slogans about equality, and now the new word is equity, but social justice, legal justice, economic fairness, and every single socialist nation that's ever come into being, what they've done is simply replace the old aristocracy with themselves as the new one. And
So
it's
you know,
go
I'm
ahead.
gonna stop you for 1 second. I'm sorry because you're I think you're really on to something when you said replacing the aristocracy. So in other words, are we just replacing, say, socialist or communist with aristocracy? In other words, are they synonymous? That you here in America, the people on the right like to talk about the communist or socialism, and then you're referring to in America, when we actually had monarchs, when we, not America at one time, but when America was first founded. Of course, they were under a monarch, the I guess the dictatorship of a monarchy in England. And of course, I'm kind of trying to be quick and to the point, which is why I'm stammering a little bit. But so you're saying that an aristocracy and socialist regimes are really one and the same. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, aristocracy. When you think of it in terms of the like medieval version of aristocracy or nobility, if you will, um, it was hereditary. I mean, you were born into it. They've simply replaced that with political affiliation. The new aristocracy is dependent upon who your political party is. In the United States, obviously, that's become the Democratic Party, the home of socialism. And when I speak of socialism, I paint a pretty broad picture because to me, communism fits under the umbrella of socialism. Fascism fits under the umbrella, uh, and so today's version of the American left fits under socialism, just like the Communist Party of China. So what we're really talking about is the primacy of the public sector over the private sector, and that's what they're really working for. Um, the left in this country right
Are the
now.
rules of an aristocracy, in your opinion, this kind of the same of socialist regimes? Is that what I'm also hearing from you?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch what the left of this country has transformed our legal system into, our system of justice into. Same thing. It is no longer about a blindfolded, you know, statue with equally weighted on each side. Just the justice system in this country has become a mechanism to protect those who are in their political circle and to persecute those who oppose them.
So I'll find out more about your book here in just a second, but can we turn this around? Do you think, do you talk about that in your book? And can we turn America around? Can America, I guess, right now, there's a huge push from not just the left, and I don't even, let's not blame it on the left. And I'm not trying to be, give them any credit or defend them, but, there's a lot of people almost in the center of this country that are kind of adhering to some of those policies that promote socialism, or they promote equity, which of course also promotes socialism. There's a lot of people that are kind of close to the center that are kind of accepting these as norms, that's helping push our country in that leftist direction, or almost towards a socialism, or in your opinion an aristocracy, synonymous. Do you think America can be turned around? Do you think that we can wake up those people? Do you think that it's possible to right this ship, so to speak?
I do believe it's possible, and I hope I'm an eternal optimist about that. I don't think you would see the candidacy of someone like Donald Trump have any impetus at all were there not a core of people in this country who still believe in the old American values of hard work and the idea that anybody can pull themselves up and become anything they want. Uh, if you watch the left, you know they no longer believe it, and even the so-called leadership of the left no longer believes it, and they'll tell you that. Um, this is why Kamala Harris wants to talk about equity instead of equality. To her, equality, she doesn't want that. Equality means that it empowers the individual to be all that he or she can be. Whereas she wants equity. She wants everybody to come out the same no matter what. And as far as do I think it can be turned around, I do have hope because we've seen a couple things that have woken us up here in the last few years. I devote an entire chapter of the book to the COVID situation and some of the things that went on. Uh, you know, the left has been extremely sort of sneaky about how they've uh, imposed some of the controls on our society that they have, and it's almost like we don't even notice it's happening. Many of us, anyways. But COVID sort of exposed some things. They did some things that they've always wanted to. When I mean they, I mean the bureaucracy, which is part of the socialist movement in this country. The bureaucracy did some things that they could not have otherwise gotten away with had there not been a public health scare, which they participated in some ways. But there was also a silver lining to that, especially when it came to parents who saw some of the things going on in the public schools, because basically the school was brought into the living room of the home. Some of the parents actually looked over their kids' shoulders and went, "Wait a minute, what are you
Right.
teaching my kid?" And there was almost like a wake up call there. And of course, what was the left's response to that? Was to call those people who decided, well, we better show up at local school board meetings and bring this up. And well, you know what? You're that's domestic terrorism, and we can't have that. So you can tell that they were very uncomfortable with the idea that some of what was going on had been exposed, and that there was a backlash to it.
I think that what's happening with either whether we would point to the leftist or Democrats or socialists in this country, the people that don't value America values, or they don't value the things that make America great, that they are the ones that create narratives that help not only perpetuate, their beliefs, but create a movement to be able to change the hearts and minds of other people to not only adhere to their movement and get more people to join their movement. I think that COVID was more than a narrative. COVID was actually more of a plan. COVID, they were able to take the narrative of an illness and put a plan behind it as a way to not only perpetuate their movement, but they brought in a lot of people that adhered to the mask and the whole concept that, 6 foot, distance and everything. They had a plan of action that they actually were able to simulate, the implementation of a coordinated plan to find a way to destroy our country or destroy values, or in their case, get people to adhere to their policies, which is like I said, it's a more of a playbook plan to say, hey, this worked with the implementation of COVID. They could use that playbook for anything, for elections, for whatever they want to do to get people more to come to their side. Would you agree with that thought?
Absolutely. COVID began, to me, I mean, to them, if you remember what the famous words of Rahm Emanuel, who was one of the top advisors to Barack Obama, never waste a crisis. Well, when the COVID crisis came along, what did the Democrats immediately seized upon it and said, oh, well, how can we use this? How can we use this crisis? Well, the first thing that they did was, well, we can win an election with this. We can see an otherwise the probability that Donald Trump was going to be reelected until COVID hit was pretty high. Well, okay, how are we gonna use that to take down Donald Trump? But as things picked up momentum, it became a wider and wider and wider set of goals, to the point where they began choosing the winners and losers economically in our society. They decided who was, quote, essential. They decided what businesses could stay open and what businesses could not. They decided where you could and couldn't go. For example, they felt perfectly at ease telling you that you can't go to church, it's too dangerous. But you certainly can show up at a protest in Detroit or Chicago with, tens of thousands of people with no distancing or anything whatsoever. That's perfectly fine. We can't trample on those people's rights.
For protest, huh?
Yeah.
So John, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What, and in this case, did the COVID virus come before the plan to never let a crisis go to waste, or was COVID, planned to be able to create a crisis that they could use? Now, of course, some may think that's a conspiratorial question. Some may think that, oh, that's those right-wing people that think that it was a coordinated plan. And of course, more people are waking up that, hey, this, was it just a coincidence? What, in your opinion, the chicken or the egg, or was it a coincidence?
No, I believe what it was for the left of this country, it was an opportunity, an unexpected opportunity, but one which, as soon as
they jumped on it right away. They probably already had the, kind of like Obamacare. They already had the playbook stuck away in a drawer, and when the moment was right, they just pulled out the playbook.
Absolutely, and I believe it was a test run for what you will see when the next crisis comes along, whether it's a healthcare crisis or it could be a climate crisis. Because if you listen to their rhetoric right now, that's the next thing coming. Well, this is existential. I hear that all the time whenever they talk about the climate. It's existential. This is going to end the human race, and therefore any means we employ are justified.
So we've got. I've got those three questions that I've asked you a little bit already, and the reason I'm going to ask them to you again in a different order, because now that we've kind of set the table for people, I think we can take a highlighter on some of your answers. So with all this information that you have, and what's coming out in your book that I'm going to encourage people to read, is America self-destructing? Is it becoming an aristocracy? And can it be turned around? And I'll let you recap those answers before I ask you more about your book.
America is self-destructing unless we who love freedom and liberty take it back. If we just put our head in the sand and decide, well, it's not my my problem. It's not my business to get involved in politics. I got too many. I'm busy and I don't have time to pay attention to that. Then yeah, we will self-destruct. It's what the left is counting on. It's what the socialists are counting on. Because what is their mantra? Just let us take care of it, and everything will be fine. We'll give you uh, security. We'll take care of you. We'll make decisions for you, and everything will be fine. If you believe that, then I have a bridge that I want to sell you right down the street here, because you know if these people have an agenda and it's self-serving. I mean, if you have a chance to become part of the aristocracy, you're going to take it. And in the same way that the Bolsheviks destroyed Russia, these people are willing to destroy the United States because there's something in it for them. I mean, while the leadership of the Communist Party drove that country into the depths of despair, they all did pretty well on the way. And you're going to see the same thing with the socialist aristocrats here.
And but you think that the MAGA movement is bigger than Trump, or that's actually you said that you think the MAGA you said that you think the MAGA movement with Trump has why people are waking up. Do you think that
One
the
of the
MAGA
reasons.
movement is bigger than Trump, and that's why people are going to move forward and
I,
try to help turn this around?
that question I can't answer. I mean, right now the Trump is the leader of it, and when if a movement goes leaderless, uh, who can say? I mean, I think we almost discovered about 2 weeks ago what would happen if the MAGA movement did not have Trump as its leader, because he came within about a fraction of an inch of losing his life at a rally in Pennsylvania. So we are that close to the precipice. Uh, and of course, Donald Trump is not a young man either. So at some point, someone has to pick up the mantle. I believe if we all do our part and understand that it's more than just about one man. The left would love to make this election about one man, the personality of Donald Trump, but it's about more than that. And I would always argue this has to be about ideas, not just one guy. But right now, I mean, we're teetering on a precipice.
So, John, what is your background before you wrote this book, and what motivated you to write this book?
I spent most of my adult life in manufacturing operations management. So I'm a manager. I did spend about 10 years in politics in Wisconsin as a quite a young person. I ran for the state legislature when I was 21 years old, fresh out of college, the first time. I did some work for the Republican Party there. I worked for the governor uh, in Wisconsin for a while, and then I ran several more times for the legislature. And I just I never lost a huge interest in politics. But what drove me to write the book was just, um, it's easy to become sort of lackadaisical well, I'm comfortable, I make a decent living,
Right.
but something just said to me, John, you have to do something. And maybe it isn't running for office again, but you've got to do something. And I like to write. We all have certain gifts and talents, and I like to research and write. And so this was my avenue.
I just got back from Milwaukee. I was there for the RNC convention. So I've spent some time in the great state there, Wisconsin. So let's give a synopsis of the book, and then I got a couple more questions for you that are going to lead away from that. What we know what motivated you? It sounds like you started getting interest. You're just kind of a citizen activist, if that's the correct way to
Right.
describe you. And from there, something spoke in your heart, in your mind, in your conscience, and you had to write a book. You did some investigation. What would you say is the most important takeaway from your book that people should read? Why people should read it, and maybe that's their motivation to get involved.
The greatest takeaway I think you can get from my book is a historical perspective. People say what went on in Nazi Germany, what went on in Soviet Russia, could never happen here. So I don't really, I'm not going to get caught up in the hyperbole. Do not, deceive yourself about that. If you read what's in my book, you will know there's historical references all over. And my major in college was history, and it's my first love. And the first two books I wrote were histories. Um, there's I make the case over and over and over. Not only can it happen here, and there's parallels to how it's happened in other places all through history, but it is happening here.
And so your book is gonna. Do you think it's gonna wake some people up to how it is happening here,
Yeah.
and shine the light on it, so people can say, "Hey, now I see where the problems are," and they too may sound the alarm like you are with your highlighted pen on those topics.
Yeah, the first third of the book is a sort of a philosophical, historical, economic reason for why socialism has never worked in the history of the world. But the second two-thirds of the book is a case-by-case study of here's an example of how it's happening here. This is it's specifically whether it be the border crisis and human trafficking and all the mess that's going on down there, and why the left of this country actively wants that to happen. I mean, people are like, "Oh, nobody could really want that to happen." Yes, they want it to happen. Why the
Oh, I
riots?
know.
Why the riots happened in 2020? Um, why are they pushing so desperately for massive mail-in balloting? Well, even though they know that it's far less secure than the normal type of way that we conducted elections. Why do they want this? Well, they want it because it benefits them. How are they distorting the green movement to further their cause? How did they use COVID to further their cause? I mean, it just goes over and over and over, and in a case by case study, sort of demonstrates how socialism has evolved in America. Socialism used to be purely an economic sort of philosophy, the haves versus the have-nots. But the socialists in America have taken it a step further. First, they introduced race, and obviously, every time you disagree with a leftist about anything, the first thing they do is they call you a racist. But now they've gone further than that. It's about the woke movement, where they're actively encouraging people to be victims. I mean, they're basically going around and asking people, "What's your status of victimhood? What group of victimhood do you belong to, or do you aspire to?" And that is not the American ethos. No American wants to be a victim, do they? I mean, Americans want to be successful. They want to lead their own lives. They want to control their own destinies. Victims do none of that. And yet, the woke movement is all about promoting victimhood.
Like to your point, the people that want this in America have figured out how to create the narratives, and they realize that they're not going to be able to get a mass movement to adhere to their ideologies if they say, "Hey, when you all come over here, there's going to be equal poverty, less opportunity, the country's be in shambles." Instead, they divide them up by saying, "Hey, you over there who's transgender, we're going to make you equal. Hey, they split us up into little small groups. Hey, you over there that believes in abortion. Hey, you over there that believes in this." They carve everybody up into little bitty groups, and that's how they get them to bring them over. It's easier to eat an elephant one bite at a time. Everybody knows that
Right.
story. It's easier, I think, to get everybody to switch over to communism and socialism, one narrative at a time. My last question for you today is, we believe that our country needs to be saved. I'm right there with you. Although I'm going to say it a little bit differently. I don't think that our country necessarily needs to be saved, because we had a guy about 2,000 years ago that saved us, eternally
Right.
speaking. But we need to preserve capitalism. We need to preserve our republic. We need to preserve our constitution. We need to preserve the values that made this country great. And so, in order to do that, I think we need to build our base. Speaking of building our base and the MAGA movement, we're in an echo chamber to some extent. How do you think that Trump can expand his base to be able to help do the part to save America that many of us, think he can do, and bring more people together? How do you think he can expand his base?
I think he's been trying to do it already by holding rallies in places like Brooklyn and other places. I mean, We need to go where we traditionally never have gone, conservatives in this country. Basically, we've written off large segments of our population. We cannot do that anymore. I'm glad you brought up the point that, 2,000 years ago, we were saved by somebody far greater than any government bureaucrat or official could ever be, or any government in general could ever be. It's one of the reasons that socialists so despise religion and are so hell bent on making an atheist society out of this country. They cannot stand the idea that there's an allegiance that's higher than what they believe the allegiance should be, which is to the state and to themselves. Allegiance to your God, allegiance to your country, allegiance to your own family. I mean, they've actively gone after the nuclear family. That is the whole purpose behind teaching sexuality to very young children, is to separate them from their parents, separate them from the influence of their parents.
That they destroyed the black families back in the 60s during the New Deal, when they took when they made black families have to have or be fatherless and not have a father in the home. However, that has actually affected white families too. It's
Yes,
affected poor families, I think, almost disproportionately in some ways, because there's actually more, from what I've last heard, there's actually more white people on government assistance than there are black people, and that's just because we have a larger population, I think.
right.
But I'd like to know what the percentage of each population is on assistance. So, John, any final words to that? I mean, I like how your answer was to expand, for Trump to expand his base. Any other final thoughts?
The final thought I would have on that particular subject is this: that we need to educate the rest of our fellow citizens on why the socialists do what they do. Why do they go to race every time? If there's myself and, say, a black person, if we're divided by race, then there is no reconciliation possible. No matter how much respect we may treat each other with, we still can't be reconciled if race is enough to divide us. If that is the sole defining characteristic that our relationship revolves around, and that is why they go after race, because it cannot be reconciled. Skin colors, just, I mean, you can't get around it.
Figment.
Yeah.
John, I want to thank you very much for being on my show today. I really appreciate your time, and I've got another interview here in a few minutes, but I want to thank you so much. Look, I want to welcome you back on my show sometime, and so you can be a part of of other platforms that I'm doing. Like I'll ask you, yeah, I'll give you a snippet right now. We got about a minute left. How do you think we can protect freedom in America? Where do you think is the biggest place where we're losing freedom in America? What do you think we can do about it? We got about a minute left.
Well, because I don't have a very much time, I would say the public school system, young people in general, education in general, that's the future, and we have to take it back. And to me, I do a fair amount of writing in the book about this. I believe school choice is the only way to go. We are no longer able to trust the public school system to fix itself. We have to introduce competition, and we have. The public schools are losing enrollment all the time, and we've got to give other options out there: parochial schools, private schools, homeschooling.
What do you think is the number one answer for that?
I believe. I think I put my child is in a private school. But it depends on the family circumstance. That's another reason why we need to re-empower our parents in this country, decide for their own children what's best, rather than the government saying, no, these are our kids and you're just incidental, which is basically their attitude right now.
So parent involvement is one of the things that we can do. Parent involvement in our school systems, more specifically.
Yeah, across the board. Go to
John,
school board meetings.
John, you've been an amazing guest, and I want to thank you so much for your time. I really look. I not only a guest, but I appreciate the fact that you took the time to write the book to motivate others. And it takes all of us. When you
Right.
talk, maybe your book resonates with I'm just doing it. 5% of the population. Maybe it's 90% of the population. Whatever percentage it is, your book is going to motivate people to get involved and see it the way you're seeing it. And we need to not only connect dots, but every person in our country is a piece to the puzzle that's going to save this nation of ours.
Yeah. The socialists are counting on you not being involved. The more involved you get, the more you'll appreciate, I think, what you and I have talked to about today. The more they'll appreciate what we've talked about today.
How right you are. John, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, and I do too. I very much appreciate it.
Everybody, hang on one second, John. Will everybody please? Thank you so much for listening, and I'd be very appreciative. Rather, you stumbling on my words a little bit because I'm eager to show my gratitude if you shared the show, and I'd appreciate if you did with somebody that might be interested in John's book, somebody that might have to find their way to save our country, save America, save our republic. Thank you so much, and have a great day.